The next speaker that I'm going to introduce, I had a chat to her before we came on today, and I thought, how do you want to be introduced? And, you've got all these names of different amazing organizations that you work for and that you do this for. And she went, I don't know that you want to mention those. And I thought, yeah, fair play. I think it's quite enough to introduce her as a human being that's done some amazing work. Her talk is on embodiment and how that looks in a kind of social change landscape. And her name is Sheetal Mistry. Come on down.
Thanks, Maisie. Hi, everyone. It's really lovely to be here with you all this afternoon. I'm really mindful that I'm the 9th of 10 speakers today. So you've already heard from 8 wonderful people. There is still one more to go after myself. So I can only imagine that right now your brains are probably feeling quite full. I'm sure you've got a lot of ideas and inspiration and reflections in your heads that you want to take away from here today. I'm also mindful that we've been in this room all day as well. So what I'd like to start by doing is doing a little check-in with our bodies just to see how we're feeling before we get started. So I'm going to ask you to turn your attention inward for just a couple of moments. If you want to close your eyes, you're very welcome to. You don't have to. And just paying attention to your body. What is your energy like at the moment? Is it feeling good? Is it feeling energized by the activity we just did? Are you feeling quite relaxed? Is there any tension that you notice anywhere in your body maybe? Is there any pain? I really hope not, but you might notice some. And how's your gut feeling at this moment in time? Are you feeling quite relaxed, quite at ease? Is it full of butterflies because you're on stage speaking to a bunch of people? And once you've noticed something maybe, in your body right now, I'd like you to take another moment to respond to anything you've just noticed. So for example, if you've just noticed a point of tension in your body, you might want to have a little bit of a stretch, a little bit of a wiggle. You might want to move the position you're sitting in. We've been sitting here all day. If you did notice some pain, please do something to address that, or give that some attention if you need to. If you notice something positive, if you notice that buzz of energy, or actually that you're feeling quite relaxed now, take a moment to sit in that feeling, to really cherish that feeling of positivity. So if you'd like to open your eyes, that was a really, really, really tiny example of embodied practice we just did there. And embodied practice is the ability to tune into our body's sensory experience as a way of understanding and moving through the world. So we just did a really tiny example of that. And you might have heard of this concept before. It's used a lot, quite widely nowadays, specifically in therapeutic spaces. I've tried it in coaching a little bit. If you do meditation or anything like that, again, embodiment and embodied practice is something used quite widely in that kind of work. But actually, it's something that's been with us for thousands of years. It is an ancestral and evolutionary practice. So if you think about the concept of fight or flight, which has actually been mentioned quite a few times today, that has been with us for thousands of years. It's our body's way of telling us, you are in danger. Here are some options as to what you might like to do to get you back to safety, to get out of that danger and that threat. And while we don't have woolly mammoths anymore, there are still reasons for us to feel under threat. And so that ability for our body to tell us when we're in danger still exists with us. So it has been with us for a long, long time. It is an innate ability our bodies have to give us messages. Whether or not we listen to them is a whole different thing. And what I'd like to talk a bit about today is how we might use embodiment in social change work. So I've been working in the social impact sector for over a decade now. I specialize in the kind of community development and engagement side of things, specifically via facilitation and coaching. So a lot of what I do is about holding space for people, for difficult conversations, for quite heavy emotions, for a lot of complexity. And I take that responsibility very, very seriously. And I spent a lot of those years starting very confidently my sessions, my workshops with, this is a safe and inclusive space. You can share whatever you'd like here. And that felt really important for me to say. Now, where does this work link to embodiment? Well, a couple of years ago, I was in a session being run by a friend. She was the facilitator, I was a participant. And she started the session by saying, I cannot guarantee that this is a safe space for you, because safety is a feeling, and I do not have the power to make you feel a certain way. What safety might look like for you and what might make you feel safe is different to what might make you feel safe. And I do not have the power to make you all feel that certain way. Now, as a fellow facilitator, that introduction blew my mind. I'd spent years insisting, this is a safe space, you can share what you'd like, but safety is a feeling. And it also reminded me of the many times that I've been in scenarios where someone else is leading the session and they've said, this is a safe space, why is no one saying anything? And I had loads to say, don't get me wrong, but something in me was saying, don't do it. My body knew that it was actually not a safe space for me to share, that it was not going to end well. It wasn't comfortable, so don't do it. And I've been in that scenario many, many times. And again, watching my friend introduce this session in this way completely made me rethink my entire practice as to how I've been doing this work. When we think about social change work, it is about people. Unfortunately, due to all the pressures that exist in the sector at the moment, lack of resource, lack of funding, lack of capacity, no lack of different causes and issues we're trying to address without the resources to do that, we unfortunately get reduced to quantity over quality. I know so many times, and I've seen this, I've written reports over the years where I've been told to do this, where we say the success of this intervention was because we got 100 people in the room, how amazing. Okay, but did we ask those 100 people how they felt on leaving that room? Did they feel any better? They came. But actually, what impact did that event, that session have on those people? Because change is felt. We feel change in our bodies. We can feel when something has made a difference. Why are we not measuring how social change can actually make people feel? And at the core of my work, at the core of social change as a whole, are concepts of safety, of connection, of inclusion. Again, all felt. You feel a connection with someone. You feel included in a space. So again, why aren't we thinking about that kind of embodied feeling and that sense of feeling that's been innate to us for thousands of years when we think about making change, which is a very human-centered concept? So since my friend introduced this kind of mind-blowing way of thinking about it a couple of years ago, I've been thinking about how I might introduce it in my work as well. So I wanted to share a couple of examples of how I've experimented with this. The first one was last year at a design conference for service designers and researchers, so slightly out of my field. But I ran a workshop on embodied spaces, and I asked people to think about, if you're working with participants on a user journey, you're looking at a service and how it might operate, why are we not also asking people, yes, does this service work? How is it making people feel at different points of using that service? It might be useful, but is it also frustrating? Is it actually causing more harm than it's actually helping? And if we're running research spaces to try and test these things, how do we ensure those spaces are generating feelings of safety so that people can honestly share whether these services are working or not? Why are we not thinking about that when we design these spaces? And the second example is earlier this year, I was delivering a workshop for community engagement professionals, the outcome being to start building a community engagement strategy. The first question I asked them was, what does it feel like to be in a trusting relationship? What does it feel like when you feel trust? And we used the answers to that question to build values and principles, which we then used as the foundations for that strategy. Because if you're trying to build relationships with your local community, you're trying to build trust. And trust is also felt. You can feel it when you trust the people that you're around. You can definitely feel it in your body when you don't trust someone. I know for a fact that my gut is like shaking all over the place when someone's a bit of a walking red flag. It knows sometimes before I do when I'm in the presence of someone I'm not entirely trusting. What was really exciting for me in testing these out, these were all experimental, was seeing how people were reconnecting with their sense of humanity. These are people who do that social change work all the time in the same way that I do, but sometimes it can be really easy to forget the people behind the change we're trying to create. It's so bureaucratic. They're thinking about numbers and pressures and KPIs, but actually, how are we thinking about how people feel, again, as a result of that change? And to see people leave these sessions thinking, I feel different as a result. I'm like, yeah, I did something right. Different's good, I think. Rather than, again, coming up with a new process with lots of tick boxes involved. So it's been really exciting for me to try and test this out in so many different ways and think about how the sector might do things differently. So I have a couple of invitations for you all, actually, before I kind of wrap up, just to try this out in your kind of own worlds. Firstly, how might you find a little bit of time in your daily practice to do that kind of check-in with your bodies that we started off with? It could be the beginning, the end of your day. It could be at lunch. It could be after a really stressful meeting you've had. Why on earth is my jaw really tense after that meeting with my manager? What is that telling me? Why am I feeling stressed out by this? Taking that moment to check in with your bodies, even for 30 seconds, can make such a huge difference. And then it helps you to generate kind of decisions around what you want to do next. It has completely changed my life just doing that in a little bit every day. And secondly, you might not be in the social change sector. That's absolutely okay. But I know that everyone in here works in a relational way in some shape or form. How might you think about embodied practice in your work with others? So if you're running a meeting or a training day or a team building day, how might you think about that concept of safety and that feeling of safety and inclusion for your teams? If you're not sure, ask them. Ask them to tell you what safety feels like for them in that setting, and use that to build ways of working, to build codes of conduct, to build kind of more integrated and more human-centered ways of working together. You could also do this in your personal relationships with your friends and your families. How do we bring that sense of feeling in our bodies that are there? Again, they are innate. We are just not as good at paying attention to them as we used to be, maybe. How do we cut out the noise, listen to what our bodies are saying, and use that to build better relationships and better the world? And I'd like to end on a quote. It's one that I think many people will have heard of already, but I think it really sums up what I'm trying to say. The best and the most beautiful things in the world cannot be seen or even touched. They must be felt. Thank you.
Thank you, Sheetal, for sharing that. You know, one of the things that struck me as I listened is the impact, I guess, embodiment has had on your life and your work personally, and how you just passionately share that with all of us. So, yeah, thank you for bringing that energy and bringing it through.